Welcome. Good afternoon. This afternoon, we're going to have a lively chat, hopefully, about district energy challenges and opportunities. The desire to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve energy resilience, coupled with aging plants and limited budgets, is leading governments and organizations across North America to consider implementing or upgrading district energy systems. Although not as common as in Europe, there are more than 700 of these systems in the United States and a handful in Canada, notably on hospital and post-secondary campuses and in Canada's national capital region, Toronto and Vancouver. So today we're going to discuss how the P3 model is delivering innovative approaches and cutting-edge solutions to help these groups achieve their goals. My name is Marie Foley. I'm a director at BTY Group, leading our infrastructure team across North America. I'm on this panel today because we have a lot of experience in district energy projects over the last 5 years as the model has been targeting projects across Canada and the US. Raam, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey there, I'm Raam Pandey. I oversee corporate development at Enwave. Enwave is a leading owner, operator, and developer of district energy systems and other low and zero carbon energy solutions. Over my time at Enwave, I've structured and executed transactions in excess of $4 billion across North America, and look forward to sharing my insights on this panel.
Great. Ron, did you want to introduce yourself?
Of course, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ron Saporta. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the University of Toronto. And we happen to own and operate one of Canada's oldest and largest district energy systems with some exciting plans for it in the future.
Great, welcome. Olivier, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. So I'm Olivier, I'm based in Paris. I'm part of the ENGIE, and ENGIE is an operator, a French operator, which operates more than 400 district heating and cooling system worldwide. And I'm heading the team in charge of developing that activity worldwide.
Excellent. Tony?
Good afternoon, Tony Cook. I'm project director at PCL Constructors Canada, and I'm currently leading the design and construction on a P3 for the National Capital District Energy System, the ESAP program, that serves 80 buildings for heating and 76 buildings for cooling, and it's under construction as we speak. If you hear any noise through my microphone, I apologize, but we are actually doing construction outside my window.
Brilliant. Okay. So I'll kick things off here with a couple of questions, but I don't expect I'll have much time to ask too many questions. I think that everybody here has a lot of opinions and expertise to share, so we'll just jump right in. So Raam, I thought I'd start with you. As with other infrastructure assets, the contract models for district energy have been evolving. Can you tell us a bit about the North American models that we see right now?
Yeah, for sure. I think the two most prevalent are ownerships and concessions. Under concessions, there's kind of two sub-verticals that are prevalent in district energy. One is more synonymous with the Canadian experience, which is, design, build, finance, operate, maintain. And we usually see those when there's a kind of a defined construction period at the beginning, followed by a finite operations period. The client has a very good idea of what they want to build. And we've seen this structure be successful at CSU Fresno. They just recently completed a transaction under this model. I also structured a greenfield waste to energy system at the National Western Center in Denver using this type of availability payment model at what was Enwave USA at the time. The second, which is more I would say specific to the district energy space, is this utility style rate-based concession model. And usually this involves taking over operations and implementing improvements over time, and is more, framework driven. And so, the framework generally addresses how capital improvements are going to be approved over the concession, and has predetermined economics as to how the P3 partner will be compensated for doing those capital improvements over the concession. So, we've seen that be successful at Ohio State. And then I also structured under what was Enwave USA at the time, a transaction with Syracuse University, which had a $100 million modernization and about $150 million upfront payment or monetization under the structure. So, during that one, we worked with the school to actually develop the design and do the modernization. And in tandem, we took over the, Enwave USA at the time took over the existing operations of that system. And both models have been very successful in project delivery. I think, when I look back at both Denver under a DBFOM or Syracuse under a rate base, two things kind of jump out to me that drove their success. One was there was kind of a greater than average engagement of the operator. So, during the qualifying process, both clients followed the tried and true kind of RFQ method, which is, qualifications, case studies, key individuals, but they took it a step further and they actually came and visited our sites, our district energy sites, and saw firsthand how we operated. They took a bit of a more informal approach and actually discussed with our operators and saw our approach to operations firsthand. And I think that that's something I encourage owners to do as part of the process is, the formal method works very well, but I think living and breathing and actually seeing how operators and what their philosophy is and how they execute on that is very helpful in selection. And then lastly is both transactions had private capital in the mix, and so having private capital adds project lenders, and then having those project lenders has another set of eyes with, Marie with BTY and a lender's technical advisor and another layer of discipline and different insights and another independent voice to ensure that everyone's aligned with the project delivery. And also it allows the contractors like Enwave to participate in the long-term capital solution, which further aligns success between operator and funders during project delivery.
Okay. Olivier, ENGIE have a strong presence in Europe as well as North America. And you yourself, you're based in Paris. What key differences do you see in the European and North American district energy markets?
Regarding the market, I would say that, as mentioned by Raam, the most common model is definitely the concession agreement model, as described by Raam. The differences between the two markets, let me say that maybe from a European point of view, if I may, the market is, I would say, driven by the CO2 reduction and the energy efficiency since a couple of years. In fact, to be honest with you, we recently concluded in the European Commission what we call the Green Deal, where we do have to improve quite significantly the energy efficiency of those different assets, as well as converting them to from fossil fuel to renewables. So let me say that the European market is more driven by the CO2 reduction. And for instance, in France, the whole industry, not only ENGIE, the whole industry in that activity has been able to divide almost by two the CO2 content of the system within 10 years only, so that we have been able to come up from 30% of renewable rate carried by the system up to almost 60% at the time being in France. This is a very important achievement, and really the trend is to improve even more the renewable weights of those assets. I would assume that in Canada and ISAP, it's a good example of that. The CO2 reduction as well has been driven the deal of this deal, and Tony Cook may elaborate a little bit on this. In the US, at the time being, let me say with all due respect that we are more still on the price-driven process rather than energy efficiency or renewable rate process, but we can see that energy efficiency concerns and CO2 reduction commitments are gaining momentum in the US as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if I could build on that, Marie, actually on both points. So I mean, Raam, a little bit nuanced in that ESAP is a design build small f, M as we're calling it, because it's a design build finance, but the financing piece ends at the end of the design and construction phase. However, our partners doing the O&M from ENGIE have been involved operating existing plants from the day we started design, and then they continue after substantial completion for another 30 years. And to Olivier's point, the federal government in procuring this actually put CO2 reductions front and center into the evaluation, and the scoring criteria for selecting the proponent was very heavily weighted, not just to price, but I'd say evenly weighted to price, but also to CO2 reduction targets and commitments from the Innovate Energy Consortium. Raam, I agree with you. Having an O&M provider engaged and fully in with the contractor is critical, and that has been happening here. So the ESAP is being delivered by a consortium that includes PCL, Black & Mac, our partner, as well as ENGIE. So we've been together from the beginning. So the involvement of O&M is constant, and with the commitments that are prescribed through construction and the operation of the CO2 reductions and energy efficiencies, it drives the decisions on the design. So it's an interesting, nuanced model that I think is actually still quite unique in Canada for district energy.
Ron, as an owner, U of T is an owner of District Energy System. Do you want to tell us a bit about your experiences for energy and your future plans?
Yeah, of course. So I sort of mentioned at the onset that we've got quite a large and old system. It's about over 200 different buildings interconnected, thermally, electrically, and it creates, and especially in a downtown urban setting in the heart of downtown Toronto, creates a lot of pretty interesting challenges for us. I think what, in my mind, sets our ambitions a bit apart is what we officially announced, I think it was just now 2 weeks ago, which is our intent and our sort of vision to leverage our campus to change the conversation to not just be about carbon reduction in terms of how much can we cut from our assets, but to explore a world where maybe our assets actually become carbon sinks for what we do. So not just bringing it down to zero, but trying to imagine a world where we flip that equation. And in doing so, we then create carbon sinks for everything else that we do as an institution. So it's a different approach and lens, and to Olivier's point, is very much focused on initially carbon reduction. But one of the challenges that we also face is that it's 120 years old. And there are pipes and tunnels and maybe not pumps anymore, but a lot of buried assets that are of that vintage. So we sort of have this challenge for us to address how do we achieve our carbon emissions in a system that is 120 years old and is desperate for renewal. And at the same time, in a space where we want to significantly increase the density of what we have on campus. There's no more land to be had in downtown Toronto. For us, it's about density, and it still means a near doubling in density, what we'd love to do over 30 years. So how do you sort of do all those goals together? How do you achieve your carbon ambitions? How do you grow a system? And how do you, most importantly, renew a system in today's day and age? So that's the challenge that we're facing. We do own and operate, but we know that to achieve these ambitions, to do those renewals, it's going to be significant investment. I think our initial projections have it in excess of $1 billion over the next 30 years. And for us, we're trying to figure out how do we approach the market? How do we start to have these conversations with like my fellow panelists and with others around overcoming those challenges in a way that sort of sets us up positively and jointly in the long run. So those are some of the challenges that we have. I think if there's one specific one that maybe I'll jump into and appreciate feedback from my fellow panelists is, for people like on the owner side, we have one system. We don't run around internationally or nationally and do 7-8 projects a year in different systems. We've got to look at one system, and we have to make a long-term choice and a decision that we have to live with for the next 20, 30 plus years, which is a bit of a different lens than going to different components. And I think that's probably the challenge that a lot of my fellow colleagues would face from an owner's perspective. How do how do you bring our challenge to the market in a space where we need to get it right? We need to get it right once, because you're not redoing this for another 30 plus years. And drive the innovation, drive the partnership, and do that in a successful, hopefully mutually beneficial way. If you were asking what's the one challenge on my mind today, that's the one challenge.
Right.
We try to engage with the market. We come up with solutions we think could work. But there's bound to be learnings from other spaces around how to make that decision effectively.
So Ron, you're farther down the journey than a lot of other district energy owners, and looking at your system, looking at the required upgrades and how you're going to get there. Another owner starting that journey, would you have any advice or lessons learned that you would share with them, that you're willing to share with us?
Yeah, please. I know, it'd be my pleasure. I think first, we just launched our site. It's called climatepositive.utoronto.ca. And if you go there, you see the full details of what we plan on doing over the next 30 years. I think it's a great website, but I can tell you the amount of late nights, hours and hours of teamwork, collaboration sessions, workshops. It took us over 24 months to develop a plan of that nature, which when you look at it in first glance is very much as a feasibility study. And now we've got to figure out how to actually execute it over the next 30 years. But it always starts with that. It's a better understanding of all of your inputs. So for us, it was, what sort of renewal do I need in my existing asset base? It was, what's our master plan for our campus from a growth perspective? And then how do I make sure that the district energy system is aligned to deliver that? I'll be the first to say we did explore a decentralized approach. But when we started the journey, we asked ourselves, is district energy the right thing? And I think through that evaluation, and we looked at it both from a CapEx perspective, we looked at long-term operating expenses, we even engaged a lot of our phenomenal faculty in and around what's the social impact of these type of projects and systems. And we came to the decision that, you know what, the same decision that I guess was made 120 years ago, district energy is the solution for us. So that's the next steps. And we almost, I guess it's almost, we doubled down on that. So to answer your question around what would I do at the onset, I think I would take that journey, ask yourself, you know, what's all of your baseline, where are you going, and explore the different options, and you'll come to your solution that fits to your context. And for us, it was district energy. Right.
Okay. Some of the challenges that you were talking about there, with an aging system, with lots of pipes, tunnels, some requiring replacement, etc. So I know that PCL has had some experience in different projects that face a lot of those same challenges. Tony, I know that there are challenges with that type of taking over and redeveloping a system like that, but there are also some opportunities and to make efficiencies. So what's your experience during the operations, or during the construction, that you would share with us, the challenges and the opportunities?
Yeah, certainly the ESAP, and we're now a couple of years into this, and it is a little bit of the construction and the operations, because we're going simultaneously in some of the existing assets. So the ESAP program basically serves the downtown National Capital Region. So it is spread through both sides of the provincial border into Quebec as well. So you're dealing with two different municipal governments. You're dealing with two different provincial environmental agencies. National Capital Commission has purview over top of all work in the downtown core, plus the federal government approvals. So first challenge, without a doubt, is navigating those political waters in the nation's capital, without a doubt. Once we're into the tunnels, I won't call it the easy work, because they're 120-year-old tunnels in the downtown Ottawa market as well. We have those same pipes, so the technical challenges are there. But probably the biggest challenges have been with the various levels of government and stakeholders versus being on a campus environment. That being said, it's also been a tremendous opportunity, because we have buy-in from both sides of the river, the municipal levels, the provincial levels. Recently announced City of Ottawa Public Library, which is a landmark architectural piece, is already signed up to take an expansion, and they are going to bring district energy in to serve the Ottawa Public Library. The City of Ottawa is committed to continue to try to help to grow this downtown network of district energy. So the opportunity when you're engaging with those many different levels is tremendous, and getting them educated and on board mainly for the climate reasons is what's motivating for the most part, as Olivier said, and almost the European model, the driving down of greenhouse gas. So it's been a tremendous opportunity. The next challenge and opportunity that I think I shared with the panelists when we were briefly talking is we are in the downtown core. The largest central heating and cooling plant, and there are 4 in the network that are interconnected in ESAP, is next door to the Supreme Court of Canada. So there is only one new construction project that will ever go on the cliff that Parliament Hill sits on top of with Supreme Court beside it, and that is a central heating and cooling plant. So the challenges that come with that, I think you can imagine, being in a high-profile area and next to the Supreme Court and in the parliamentary precinct, but the opportunity is tremendous. So I have to tip my hat to the sponsors for this project from Public Works, who saw the vision for it, and there's a visitors education center being built into that central heating and cooling plant to showcase district energy in such a high-profile location in the downtown nation's capital. So the challenges are certainly there, but it's a tremendous opportunity for an architectural landmark that will be sitting there and shown as a beacon for greenhouse gas reduction and district energy. So those are the 2 big ones. I could go on for far too long about challenges on a daily basis, but those would be the big ones, Marie.
It sounds like it's been great having Olivier involved during that process from ENGIE's side. Olivier, did you have something to...
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe elaborate a little bit on 2 points. Ron's point, what we try to promote in Europe, to be honest with you, each time we have a discussion or we engage with a city mayor, for instance, is really to think long-term perspective in order to consider those assets. And when I'm talking about assets, I'm talking about the facilities, but as well the pipes, which are maybe old but very useful, to be honest with you, to see those assets as an essential infrastructure of the city, as could be the gas or the electricity grid, and as a mean to set up a climate plan, and as a mean to improve energy efficiency, as a mean to carry renewables that couldn't be mobilized with lots of different boilers, for instance, spread out within a city. So the main topic that we would like to convince everybody is really to think long-term, to have a kind of an holistic approach in order to set up new solution, to have efficient solution, and to build a kind of an energy master plan, for instance. And the second thing is really to consider again those infrastructure as a living infrastructure. The idea is not to say that we are going to build a network and then we are done. No, we will follow up and we will follow the urban planification of the city, and we will be able to expand the network, and maybe we will be able in the future to benefit from a waste heat recovery that may exist in the city neighborhood, for instance. So really the idea is to constantly being able to adapt your system, and maybe being able to adapt your system to the new needs of your customers. So I'm totally passionate by that activity, to be honest with you, and I really believe that activity has to be recognized as a means to achieve our target in terms of efficiency and again renewable rates. My 2 cents.
Yeah, Olivier, I completely agree with you, and I think that this is something that's very unique about district energy as an asset class. You know, I look back at, you know, the earlier days of my career, and I've worked on, you know, roads P3s or hospital P3s, and you know, I think that operator engagement is paramount in all of these, but to different degrees. I mean, like, you know, if you're an operator and you're looking at like a highway or a road, you know, you're looking at a life cycle solution, you have a reasonable idea of what's going to be there 15 years from now, 20 years from now, and you can kind of underwrite that in a reasonable way. I think that what's very different about district energy, and like Olivier, you hit this point around the head, is that you need a framework that's alive, that's more dynamic, and I think that's you see that in you saw that the infancy of that in like the OSU concession agreement, the Syracuse concession agreement, which had a framework as opposed to a prescriptive way in which the partnership runs. So you had more guidelines that govern how you were going to interact with the public client, and it allowed for it allowed to facilitate evolution and new thought, and it didn't have those kind of defined elements of the project. So I think that, like, I completely agree with you. It's a very unique element of this asset class versus others.
Yeah, you touched on something, or Tony touched on something with relation to different levels of government, and I think what's unique and what I've discovered has been a huge asset of success to us is the partnership at the local municipal level. And district energy systems, by their nature, sort of expand out. And it's not too often that you have a campus where you just own all of the land, and especially not in our very urban context. So we have to cross public rights of way all the time and things of that nature. And if you try to put in an application, and I'm going to assume it's like this in all jurisdictions, to actually cross the public right of way, you can see that the timelines related to that will kill the project. So we're fortunate, and I know other successful projects are fortunate by having that early engagement with the municipality, getting their buy into the concept, so that when it comes to the transactions that occur afterwards, going to the right committees to be able to cross a street that has, hydro assets, it has subway systems, it has, transportation, all these approvals. Getting the municipality bought in the onset sort of shortens that process at the end. Still takes a while, but it doesn't get to 3, 4, 5 years like it would traditionally. You can do that in a more efficient way with early and strong engagement and alignment with your municipal partners.
I think we've all touched on ESG there. I think the current push in ESG is probably improving the awareness and the partnering abilities on these projects. How do you guys see that impacting the district energy market, both in the procurement and or in operating?
So happy to kick this off. There's a UN quote that's resonated with me, and it's that cities account for more than 70% of global energy use, and half of that is consumed to heat and cool buildings. So, we have at Enwave, like, we have 400 plus customers across our districts, hospitals, commercial, residential. Ron, we serve U of T as well, some of U of T's campus, and one commonality across all of these, customers, they've made carbon neutrality commitments in the recent past, and they value ESG. In order to achieve those goals, they need to decarbonize their real asset portfolio. And what we're seeing is that these organizations are turning more and more to the Enwaves of the world. I mean, we spend our entire days thinking about how to decarbonize real assets, whether it be on pipe via low temperature hot water, or off pipe via geo or other technologies. And we're not limiting ourselves to DE, to district energy. I mean, we just recently completed 300 net zero homes in Markham, and on pipe. An example of this ESG impact is, we've been working for the past 2 years with Sachin Gunaratne and his team over at the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, and we structured a $1.4 billion agreement. And so this partnership has allowed us to kind of increase the capacity of our deep lake water cooling system. Is turbocharging our expansions both east and west, and we've been able to upsize our networks in Toronto, but then also build out new networks in Mississauga. And I think the key to all of that activity was just a market push on ESG, and that was the catalyst for all these developments.
Ron, did you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I've got quite an interesting community that I partner with, and in higher education, our community of faculty, of students, of staff are highly engaged, and also I'm going to say highly vocal, and especially on issues when it comes to things such as ESG around what are we doing around carbon, what are we doing with, right across the entire SDG framework. And it is, as a result, we actually end up having some quite, I'm going to say, amazing conversations. Some people, very rare do we get down the road of it's bottom line, it's about dollars. We're very much on the opposite end of that spectrum, given the environment that we have, and it becomes great conversations and opportunities to figure out how do we do more, how do we do it quicker. Net zero targets at 2050, we know is not enough based on a lot of the studies that are coming out. So we get that internal sort of groundswell. We get this pressure internally from this engaged community. And we're also fortunate that this engaged community happens to be some of the great thinkers that we have in the country. So we have an opportunity to flip that on its head and to leverage that insight into figuring out how do we come up with financial models and structures out of our School of Business to help us? How do we engage our humanities in and around engagement activities that we could be doing on campus? And then, of course, the traditional alignments that exist with engineering and architecture and bringing that in. So I think we've got quite an amazing and unique opportunity here because of that community. We call it using our campus as a living lab. So how do we take our campus and make it a laboratory for our faculties to do research, for our students to learn and study, and hopefully in doing that, they're going out and our graduates go out there and talk about district energy and talk about the other ESG sort of aspects wherever they end up post UFT. So it's an exciting opportunity for us from that perspective.
If I may just add a comment on that, we recently had a discussion that the European Commission, in the frame of the Green Deal, to be honest with you, and the fact that we try to promote as much as possible the fact that we do need new business model in order to push those systems and to set up new criteria for project selection that may trace or emphasize, if I can say that, the benefits or the external positivities of those systems, rather than just comparing the upfront payment, for instance, or the CapEx or the OpEx. Really, the idea is to see those solutions as a whole solution and to see the impact of those solutions under what we call the life cycle assessment. Not only maybe the CO2 reduction, but what are the impact on the neighborhood or for your activity locally, on air quality, for instance. Really, the S of ESG is becoming more and more important, to be honest with you, so that we will have to focus on that. And we do think that we do need to create new business models that could consider those concerns. We are not done yet. We are still with our, as usual, business model, if I may. But in the future, the idea is really to get rid of that.
So with that being said, and talk of new business models, like there are a lot of smaller municipalities who haven't got into this district energy game. Has anybody got any thoughts about how we could promote and get them involved, get to the table for district energy projects?
Happy to kick off. I mean, so I think, driving engagement with municipalities via development of an unsolicited proposal framework is something that I think could be very fruitful. Developing private sector proposals can be very costly, and there's nothing off the shelf about Enwave and I'll speak for ENGIE and PCL about like the solutions that you bring to the market. I mean, they're tailored to respond to each client and the issues that they're having. And so, having a framework in how a proposal will be evaluated will drive the private sector to solicit those that have this framework. And, to be more specific, principles I'd love to see addressed by a municipality in a framework like this would be, confidentiality and protections of IP and trade secrets. I mean, it'll allow us to have a much more open dialogue and kind of lay everything on the table if we have some level of comfort that it's not going to be both exposed to the market and also our competitors. And then like just process for intake and approval of the proposals. So even a flow diagram of what happens when you submit a proposal, that maybe it's you reject the proposal, you have an accelerated and focused RFP process where if you love the idea, then you either market test parts or all of it under a narrow RFP. You can accept and negotiate bilaterally, which I've done successfully with what was Enwave at USA at the time with Louisiana State University. And I think the key here is that it's not to try to box anyone in. I mean, all the approvals and flexibility stays with the owner. It's just more so of, hey, if I submit this, if I spend the time to create this proposal for you, I know that there's some perimeter around the like how it's going to be evaluated and what the next steps will be.
Okay. So we're running out of time, but I did have a question sent in. What are the most significant challenges you're facing on achieving compliance with new greening policy, net zero? And how do you propose mitigating integration risk with new electrical capacity with the local utility?
I don't mind starting that because we're dealing with that right now, especially the latter part of that question. So we let me take a step back. One of the fundamental principles that we have is to eliminate fossil fuels for heating. That's how part and parcel to our plan to decarbonize, as I'm sure as many spaces. And we're lucky in our jurisdiction, electricity is comparably cleaner compared to natural gas. And I know that doesn't exist right across North America, but for us it is. But we're downtown Toronto, and if you look at ESO projections or Toronto Hydro projections, you can see that we're constrained. So we have actually been meeting with Toronto Hydro right from day one. So I talked about how it was a 2-year process for us to develop this plan. I think the second group we called outside of bringing on our own technical advisors was Toronto Hydro, because we knew that we needed to get in probably 7 or 8 times our current capacity in electricity onto our campus to make it a reality. And it led to a broader conversation because then the city got involved and we started to talk not just about how we're going to find electricity, but can we leverage our plans to also then start to create climate resiliency zones for downtown Toronto? Having the type of assets that we do, big athletic centers with big empty halls that could be great emergency shelters, spaces of that nature. So all of a sudden we have the city interested in this. We have Toronto Hydro engaged and incorporating our own master plan into their long-term master plans, has created a great partnership. But those type of agencies move probably slower or just as slow as universities. So you got to start early and you got to look at those long-term needs and get them on board early.
Great. We have only a couple of minutes left. So one more question has come through. Is there a minimum density needed for a district energy system to make sense? Does anybody want to have a shot at it, or we'll leave that one to stew on?
I got a gut reaction. Raam, I see you want to say something. Why don't you go first?
Well, I mean, the short answer is yes. But I mean, I think that what we're seeing now is that you can develop smaller districts or decentralized districts or use geo or other solutions. You don't have to have a massive plant with miles of pipe underground. Like, I think district energy has evolved from that. So I think that is there a hard and fast number? Not one I'd care to give. I think that it's worth engaging and kind of having the conversation.
Great.
But if I may on that point, just a few words. If you look at the trend in France, the average size of the networks right now in France is just below 6 kilometers, if I recall correctly. In the past, it was almost 30 or maybe, like in Paris, 500. So Yes, we can talk about density, but the size of a city or the size of a campus or municipality, to me, it's not a real concern. We can have yes, density figures in mind. So usually we consider 1.5 kilowatt hour per meter, for instance, but it's a rough figure. Again, we have been able to develop district heating system very efficient in small cities. Great.
Okay, well, we're running out of time here. Thanks everybody for contributing today. I've enjoyed the discussion a lot and the run up to the panel as well. So thank you everybody for participating.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks.